disappear someday. And we're just continuing to guard as best we can against being surprised or being put in a position where we can't follow through on the policies and programs we want to implement. So it's not fun, but we're paying a lot of attention to it, and happy to continue to update this group as we go along in the weeks and months ahead. There's just really a lot of unknowns.
Thank you.
This is maybe a similar question I've asked previously in meetings about maybe how the county itself is doing relative to its own internal operations around staffing. And I mean, I know there's a contract procurement study, and some of those things are underway and in place, so we'll publicly hear about that. But just, I mean, how does administration evaluate its own internal hirings or at all levels, right? Especially, I think, my question I've asked you maybe last time you were here, and I think even county executives around cabinet level positions and what's the cabinet really look like in terms of equity.
Mm-hmm. So I'll say a couple of things. Number one, on any particular policy-related area, I would turn it over to Lenore to add. But to answer your question specifically, how are we doing? Not as good as I wish we were. Honestly, Sabrina and Nyla and I have had multiple conversations about this, and as my team knows, the very first all-staff email I sent after I started was about DEI training and my expectation that it be done. But are we doing enough? No, and I'm concerned about that. As you might imagine, you get pulled in a bunch of different directions on a regular basis, putting out fires. But this is something that we've had a lot of conversation about in terms of supporting Lenora and her office and what she does, and even ultimately thinking about how we restructure where she sits within the organization.
Excuse me.
We've not had a lot in the way of cabinet director changes, but we've got 2 openings now, and the full expectation is that we seek out diverse candidates to fill them. The Office of Housing and Office of Homeless Services are both positions that are open. So, Glenn, to your question, we're trying to do good things. We're not doing as well as we should, and it's something I do pay attention to and need to continue to push on.
So, I remember talking to candidate Romaine about how could he use CASE more effectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we sit here as a community body that has tentacles, and some of us have mayor influence in places that could be useful to, even in the case of cabinet level hirings or positions. I mean, I don't know, there's probably people around this room who may know talent or candidates should there be notification, right? So using this body in that way beyond, could be maybe useful, helpful.
Absolutely take you up on that. I think the Office of Homeless Services position is posted. Sarah's not perhaps yet, but we'll make sure we get that information through the chair to you all so that you can see the position description, the posting, and we would highly encourage you, A, to circulate it among your networks and encourage qualified candidates to apply, and B, feel free to drop me a note and let me know you have referred someone to the position so that we can make sure at the very least we have a conversation with them and give them the opportunity to highlight their skill sets and be a strong candidate for the job. So I'm happy to do that for the offer.
I will send, I believe Homeless Services is posted,
Yep.
so I will make sure that gets disseminated to this body.
Please do.
For you to disseminate as you see fit, if that's good for you guys.
Thank you.
And I know the Department of Housing with Sarah's pending retirement, that posting is also coming sometime soon, so we'll make sure you get that as well.
For the housing, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'll stay on that.
Thank you.
And that department, just to piggyback on what Eric said, the Director of Housing is a confirmable position.
I believe it is. We create a position confirmable by the council. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I will keep my comments relatively brief if I can. I like to talk. I will do my best. But I want to root my comments in gratitude. And Sabrina, your words align to some of what I'm thinking about is just the gratitude for the ongoing courage of leadership in this moment. To the staff and the support for the case who are here at this table, our leadership team, County Executive Ronayne. I do want to express gratitude for the determination to keep the work going. We can see around the country, around the state, even locally, where folks are scrubbing websites and making changes out of fear and preemptively complying to limits on what I believe are constitutional rights that we and our organizations have. And so I want to just say that publicly, how appreciative I am for the determination to keep the work going and the recognition that the issue isn't about the words, right? The issue is about the work. And so we can change the words, and no matter what we call this work of creating conditions where all people thrive and our most marginalized people have the opportunity to be healed and have repair to harm that has been historically ongoing, that's the work that is under attack. That's the issue. And so no matter what we call it, that work continuing is what's under threat. As I look around, I want to say thank you to all the case members who've been diligently coming together. We'll talk a little bit more about what that's been looking like in service to continuing our work, re-engaging, recommitting, setting forward in actionable ways that support the legislation and support our reasons for being here. So thank you all for that. I also just want to say that as we engage with the work that Enlightened Solutions has been doing, it is always important to me that we honor that there are multiple tolls to racism and its impact. The one that's most deeply passionate to me is our mental health and well-being. And so I can imagine what you all are experiencing as you continue the day-to-day work as we're actively under assault from racist ideas. And so I hope you all continue to take care of yourselves as best you can. I'm certainly doing the best I can so I can keep showing up in leadership, showing up also for myself and my family. So I want to just encourage your hearts in that way. And then I want to celebrate some things. Like the people around this table been doing some things, and we gotta probably do a better job of like pushing out just notifications of like joy in the midst of this as folks stay the course. And so, Member Contreras, you had been very busy opening up Central Villa 25. And so, congratulations on that. Amazing. Oh, yeah. I wasn't going to say that in a public meeting, but there is, some of us had some dinner. And so I just want to pause and invite you to say anything that you might like about where your work is and,
no, thank you. I mean, thank you for the opportunity. Everyone's welcome to Centro Villa 25 if you haven't been there yet. So definitely, I promise you good food. Good music, and I think for me, working on a project for over a decade that started out as an idea or a little something you had in your heart and seeing it manifest itself, but more seeing people experience the space is super rewarding. So just enjoy. So that's why I feel like I need to know when you went, what you ate, what you did, how did you like it, right? Now that I can do that, so super excited. I'm actually feel very fortunate that Centro Villa is opening in the midst of this chaos. So it's kind of ironic. But it's also the first time that the Latino community owns something and we have something and it's ours and we have a space, right? And so we talk about a place for community to happen. It's very difficult to talk about community engagement when there isn't a place where people can engage or gather. And so it feels like a reunion every time I'm in there because I'm seeing people that I know. And again, super distracted from my work in a good way. I do, want to bring awareness, and actually County Executive Ronayne came over, and Laurel came over to Centro Villa a few weeks ago to meet with me and Councilwoman Santana, specifically around the raids that ICE has been doing around Latino businesses specifically. So it's happening in our own backyard, and we're not used to that, and we don't know how to react to that. Immediately, Centro Villa opened in January officially, and the third week of January, I'm having to put the market on shutdown. So if you go there and it's inconvenient because you're going in through a main door and somebody has to let you in, is because we still have the market on shutdown. So I think there's just still like that great cloud. We're gonna protect it and we're gonna do everything we can, and we have a plan, and I have bail money, but it wasn't the way we were planning on opening. So I think we're gonna navigate and work on making sure people feel safe, but we have some real threats that are happening in our backyard in ways that we were not prepared. I don't know anything about immigration or ICE. I'm having to learn very quickly. So I think that's adding to like an already stressed community or stressful job. So again, the best way to counter that is to support, to know where you're spending your money, to really channel that, who we should be spending our money with, who we should not. Because at the end of the day, yeah, it's about racism, it's also about economics. So.
Thank you for persevering through the hardest aspects of this now, seeing this dream and vision be impeded on by this environment, but your persistence is beautiful. And then I'm going to turn to Member Wright, who I learned today had a groundbreaking on a project that was shared with us previously. Just want to lift you up and celebrate you in this space. Is there anything you'd like to share about that, about the project and where it is?
Well, first, I just want to say congratulations again to Janice. I remember being in a meeting talking about all the things she was doing to get that off the ground, and development is no joke. So truly congratulations to you. In terms of our project, we broke ground on a 54-unit building that really converges the area between Huff and University Circle. So it's connecting those two neighborhoods. It's mixed income, so there'll be market rate units and variations of AMI from 80 to 30%. Walkable neighborhood. It's right at 101st and Woodward. We did it through a low-income housing tax credit, a 9% from the Ohio Finance Agency, which made our firm the only one in Cleveland that happens to be women-owned, happen to be Black, have that type of product, which and the county gave us support for that, so we thank you for that. Executive Ronan came and spoke at the event, and so that just propelled us. We did that in partnership with Walter Cooper Companies, and that propelled our next project. So we broke ground on that. They've already started framing, and then we're getting ready to close on Gateway 66, which will be our second LIHTC, 80 units. We got county support for that. UH put money into that. This is the first time UH put money into housing. So that will be our second LIHTC deal, which means in 18 months we should have 2 LIHTCs in service, meaning we don't have to partner anymore to do one. We can stand up and do it on our own. So we're excited about that.
So just historic. I'm in awe of you, of your team, of the work, of the vision. And a lot like Central Via 25, so necessary in this moment in time. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. County has been an incredible partner.
As you have been an incredible
thank
leader.
you.
Right.
We're gonna say that in this space.
And Angie, right? You and Angie?
Yes. Oh, my business partner, Angela Bennett, is the other co-founder for Frontline Development Group. And I will say Gordon Crossing, which we broke ground on recently, and Gateway, strategically, they are in thriving markets that are receiving a lot of investment. And so it gives an opportunity for the hospital worker, the law student, the senior citizen, the single mother to all live together. So that's our model, stepping away from concentrating poverty, but really, spreading it across the units. And you're not going to be able to tell what units are affordable. We are talking to a foundation for Gateway 66 for an extra $1 million to support the dignity of design. So you're not going to drive through, because that project is part of a 5-acre footprint. It's going to be about 300 units of market rate, accessory dwelling units, townhomes. We got homes that are north of 500,000, and we got affordable housing, and they're less than 500 feet from each other. But you won't drive through that neighborhood and say that's the affordable housing building, So we're gonna make sure that we invest in the dignity of the design so that people feel good about coming home. But being able to put that in places so that everyday people can rise with the tide of investment that's happening in that area, so.
It's wonderful. Truly visionary, strategic, it's just, again, I'm in awe. So
Thank you.
Any other good news, joy that we want to lift up before we move forward? All right, with that, we need to approve our minutes from the last meeting.
Yes, the minutes from the December 10th, 2024 meeting were distributed in December 20th, 2024 via email for your review. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A motion made by member Schumate. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Ms. Wright and Mr. Clayton. Sheila, I heard you. Seconded by Sheila Wright. Is there further discussion or any discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and the minutes are accepted. I thank you.
All righty. So before we move forward, we have one other item that needs a vote, and I know we have at least one member who needs to leave us. And so if we could take a quick pulse check of, are there others who need to leave early, or can we? Okay, all righty. So we would like to get that vote in before we part today.
So I will try to be brief. So the community survey, which we will get probably a further update from member Schumate out of the communications subcommittee, is going to be hosted by Cleveland State University. The council chair and the subcommittee communications chair requested an opinion from the county inspector general. If we were permitted to provide quote-unquote swag or nominal gift cards and other door prizes to incentivize participants to participate in the community service project that's going to be sponsored by Cleveland State University. Those items would be purchased from the money allocated to the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity. The Inspector General opined that the County Ethics Code does not prohibit CASE from purchasing these gift cards or swag or other prizes, so long as the purchase does not personally benefit a case. I'm reading this, I can say this in my sleep, I was the Inspector General. You can purchase the items as long as it is not from what is considered a prohibitive source and over $75, and as long as it doesn't personally benefit a family member or a loved one of somebody sitting here. So that was the opinion that the Inspector General gave. Does everyone understand what that, okay, I have great notes that I type out, but like I said, I did this work for 4 years before my current role. So in order to do that, we'd need a motion. As a reminder, the proposal, the CSU proposal for the community survey that we're spending with them is right under $30,000. Thank you again to you for that, to Lenora's department for that. So we must first decide if we want to allocate money to purchase incentives, and if we do, how much do we want to spend? I believe communications suggested somewhere around $2,000, assuming we would want to.
Yeah.
Want to add anything to what I said?
Sure. So the intent for the, and this has been a half or longer process to get to this point, but is really to get a pulse from the community around their sense of equity issues and matters, in particular those pertaining to our 4 subcommittees, which would be justice, health, economic development, and quality of life. And, I think the opportunity for us is to, and there's work being done at each committee level to, kind of re-engage the work of those committees. They've been actively, but to really go out to the community and get a better sense of how the community feels around equity, and in particular those 4 areas. And so we agreed, we did a RFP, we had 4 or 5 firms that submitted, we evaluated, we ended up selecting CSU over a year ago, I believe, and finally have gotten around to being able to advances work. And their recommendation is that we would maybe have some incentives for those individuals at focus groups for their time, as well as for a broader sense of incentivizing the community to fill out a survey, which will later be created once we get through focus groups. And the focus groups really help us narrow down the questions and the topics. So we'll get some feedback from committee members, we'll get feedback from community members. The research team will then develop the survey instrument that will then go out to the field with hopes of, getting, attending lots of community meetings, lots of places where some of these subcommittee work is being identified and looked at. And so these incentives are really meant to help ensure that we get good collaboration, cooperation, but also to compensate, if you will, or provide some gesture back towards individuals who are giving of their time. So it's not just we're asking nothing in return, but we're asking and we're willing to at least provide some nominal. And it could be that it's sandwiches, donuts. It could be that they're become, as Clerk Bird said, other incentive items for individuals. So our goal and ask is for us to be able to maybe spend a couple of $2,000, I think, to have that we could then make some of the purchases in conjunction and alignment with the CSU research team's recommendation.
So with that further explanation and what we said about this being within the confines of the county ethics ordinance, is there a motion to approve the use of case funds to purchase incentives as Glenn discussed for participants of CSU Community Survey? Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was moved by Reverend Chalker, seconded by Mr. Cavanis. Is there any further discussion or questions or concerns? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And just secondly, just to make it really clean, we need to determine an amount. As Glenn mentioned, the committee thought of a baseline of 2,000. Maybe we can do the motion in terms of putting a cap to spend no more than, maybe it's 2,000 to 3,500, or what do you suggest?
I would say 2,000 to 2,500 to keep it in that range. I think as we envision how we might make this work with raffles and other things that both honor people's time, but also acknowledge that we have a limit to the spending we want to do with this. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. Question and a motion, I'm gonna say that we've made a motion to allocate no more than $2,500 of the case's money to purchase incentives to the participants for the CSU Community Survey. Is there a second? Second.
That's fine.
So the chair
Keep us
moved, Member Cannon second. Any further discussion or questions or concerns on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for.
With that, we're going to move into a presentation from Enlightened Solutions. So grateful to have you both here today.
I have a little bit of background, if you will, for my friends Chi-Chi and Bethany. So beginning, Chi-Chi is the co-founder and director of strategy of Enlightened Solutions, a racial and gender justice think tank. She is a proud first-generation American. She holds a bachelor's in political science, African studies, and African American studies from, I learned being a transplant, the Ohio State University. Before co-founding Enlightened Solutions in 2018, Chi-Chi served as a senior community engagement specialist for the city of Cleveland, working as the liaison to the U.S. Department of Justice under the consent decree. She also worked on Mayor Justin Bibb's transition team. Chi-Chi's been involved in several community organizations of varying capacities, including the Soul of Philanthropy Cleveland, the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, Give Camp, Junior League, Jumpstart, the NAACP, the Assembly for the Arts preterm. She is a strategic systems change researcher interested in forward thinking with over 15 years of experience in asset building and community advocacy. She is dedicated to progressive, inclusive equality for all people. So I welcome Chi-Chi. I also have the pleasure of introducing her partner, in all senses of the word, right? Her partner, her partner in this great endeavor, Bethany Studenik. She is the co-founder and managing director of Enlightened Solutions. Bethany holds not only a bachelor's in social work from the University of Akron, but also a master's in social administration from Case Western Reserve University, as well as a Juris Doctorate from the University of Akron Law School. On top of being a barred and licensed attorney, she's an accomplished fundraiser and government relations professional focusing on data aggregation and analysis. Bethany has worked in a variety of populations, including survivors of domestic violence and families experiencing living in poverty. Bethany also, like Chi-Chi, and a few others in this room, like my boss and my colleague, have worked for the city of Cleveland. Bethany worked for the U.S. Department of Justice consent decree as well as the Ohio Guidestone and McCulley & Company LLC before co-founding Enlightened Solutions. So thank you to my friends Bethany and Chi-Chi. Welcome. And for those of you who have not heard their presentation, this is going to be a delight.
Well, thank you all, first and foremost, for being here and for grounding yourselves in the work of equity. It's really, really encouraging to walk into a room and know that every single person is here for the sole purpose of making our region a thriving region. And it's very encouraging at a kind of a discouraging time, not just for our region, but for the country in general.
We need that leadership more than ever. So thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to talk to you about Project Noir, which is probably what we're best known for. But Enlightened Solutions, if you could go to the next slide. We are a 501c3 nonprofit think tank. We focus on race and gender justice. So we complete independent research, speaking about Project Noir today, but we do work with systems as well to apply what we've learned in the community. And then we also do grassroots advocacy. So I'm often talking to community members about what they're going through. We've done legal referrals. I've represented folks. We've worked with a lot of partners over the years. And so we have a lot of work left to do, but we're really excited to talk today about Project Noir, but just to know that our work is very broad.
So on the next slide, and I know that folks on the left side of the room, you all will be focused over here, no worries. But our agenda today is a 5-part agenda. First, we're going to open with the current landscape, right? We are data nerds, so excuse our usage of open source data, but we think that it's super important to ground ourselves in the reality of what is happening. So we'll be talking a little bit about the current landscape and Project Noir overview. Then we'll get into the meat of why we're here today, our research into workplaces, healthcare, and education. And just a little note on the healthcare section, we've had a lot of interface with the county. We've worked on a report about the state of women in Cuyahoga County, integrating our data and integrating a lot of the information that we've learned with Project Noir. So we're really glad that the county has continued that work and that we're here within this body. And then lastly, education about the brain drain here in Northeast Ohio, primarily here in Cleveland. And then lastly, we have call to action. It's not enough to just tell you all, what's going on. We want to empower you all in the spheres that you're working in, the advocacy work that you are doing, pushing you all forward, and knowing that Cleveland can be a national leader in racial and gender equity if we try.
So we'll talk a little bit about some of the demographic and social changes in our country right now that are driving a lot of the conversation that we're currently having. And so we're going to get into just a couple demographic trends that we think are important. And this is often kind of the basis for why Project Noir is so important at this time and why it's important that we continue on with this work, but also kind of what's driving this change and why it is an economic protective factor for our region. We'll get into why, but we really believe that building a thriving economy necessitates that we are investing in the folks here and making sure that there is equitable opportunity. We'll get into that a little bit in the next piece.
So we think it's pretty obvious. Obviously, we are talking about the county, but Cleveland is a Black majority city. This is pretty obvious, but I think that sometimes within equity work, we're not really rooting ourselves in how ethnically diverse our city is and how we should be looked at like a Memphis, like an Atlanta, like a metropolis where people of color are able to thrive, right? And the majority of our work, again, is being rooted in the reality of what is going on, the demographic shifts. And on the next page, we'll talk about how change is already here.
So we say this because there are huge demographic shifts going on in America. And I know that we're at a time where we're talking a lot about DEI, we're talking about inclusion. We're seeing the pendulum swing year by year on what the temperature is around that. Chi-Chi and I have been saying this for how long? 6, 7 years?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working together now, it's like 10 years.
I know.
Our husbands are like, y'all should just get married at this point. But truthfully, we've been talking about this demographic shift because it is so apparent generation by generation. We were both raised by boomers, like it or love it, but the demographics are very, very different from our parents' generation to the generation that they have raised. And if we are not cognizant of it, we are going to be left behind as a region.
Next slide. So let's start with race, right? Looking here at this slide, you can see the older generations, baby boomers, we'll start there. Baby boomer generation is 71% white in America. Contrast that with Gen Z, and I know we think Gen Z are babies, but right now they're about 25, 26. They're starting to enter the workforce, they're graduating college. Gen Z is 48% racially and ethnically diverse. By 2045, there won't be a racial majority in America anymore, right? So understanding these are huge shifts happening very quickly over multiple generations. So it's no surprise that we're having the conversations that we're having right now when we see demographic shifts on this scale. Next slide, please.
And on our next point, right, most of the time when folks are thinking about DEI, they always start with race, right? But we are really rooting our work in gender as well. Women now engage in the labor force at rates comparable to their male peers. And specifically for Black and Latina women, we are exceeding our male counterparts, not only in the labor force, not only in jobs that are labeled pink collar jobs, right? Service jobs or jobs that cater to women and femmes, but jobs that are seen as more masculine as well. Tech, administrative jobs, jobs that hold a lot more weight as it relates to whether it's payment or prestige as it relates to how much skills you're able to garner within that field. The trend, like we stated before, is even more pronounced for women of color. No, you could go to the next slide.
In terms of sexuality, Gen Z is 20% LGBTQIA, and you can compare that again with the populations before them. And something we always say here that's important to understand is that it's not that each generation is becoming more LGBTQ, it's that they're feeling the ability to talk about it and identify that way publicly. But this is really, really important. We're seeing increased litigation in this space. We're seeing folks asserting their rights at work and in education. And we expect that future generations, we may see those numbers continue to rise, right? That trend is that there are much more folks identifying with these groups. So again, huge demographic shifts. When you think about what Gen Z and how they identify and how baby boomers identify, and then millennials and Gen X somewhere there in the middle, right? Having those experiences, we see the trends are pretty clear.
Next, Chair Grimes had talked about the importance of mental health, right? There are huge generational differences about how individuals are not only accessing mental health services, but how they're interfacing with how to talk about mental health, right? Younger generations are more likely to seek mental health support, whether it's within the workplace or attempting to seek that support within their personal lives. They are more likely to receive mental health diagnoses and to request these accommodations at work. Nevertheless, our society isn't necessarily always making it easier for individuals to access it. So even though there are more opportunities, it doesn't mean that the barrier to entry is easier for our Gen Z counterparts, our younger millennials who are probably struggling with some mental health concerns. And I want to put a finer point on that. COVID exacerbated mental health issues. I don't need to belabor the point for the folks and the advocates around the room, but we do need to have a bit of empathy for our Gen Z younger siblings, nieces, grandchildren, because they came of age during a time where the world was completely and totally locked up. So, social skills, the ability to network at work, the ability to move forward within college has absolutely been stunted, and that is a generational marker. So it's something that we need to keep in the back of our heads as we are thinking about this through an equity framework.
So just to tie it all together here, the reason we start with this conversation is because we believe that inclusion is foundational to building a region that can thrive. We're looking at demographic shifts across the nation. Cuyahoga County and Cleveland specifically is already very diverse. We have the opportunity to be competitive on a national scale if only we can figure out how to invest in the folks who are here. The future talent, the future innovators, the future founders, the future consumers look a lot different than they looked 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it's changing very rapidly, right? Every 5, 10 years, we're seeing and feeling these shifts. And so that's why we believe that it's really important that we're investing specifically in Black women in our region. We believe that starting with the most marginalized is the way that you build inclusive societies, inclusive regions. And for Black women, we have been rated the worst place in America for Black women. We have to start with this conversation if we want to thrive as a region.
So a little bit about Project Noir. Like Bethany stated, back in 2020, this comes out of research from the University of Pittsburgh. The sociologist initially was doing a project on poverty, and she very quickly realized that these are not issues around poverty or class. A lot of our social determinants of health are specifically rooted at the intersection of both race and gender. And for her study, it was specifically about race and gender as it relates to female and Black, right? So when CityLab Bloomberg published this article, first and foremost, Bethany sent it to me and was like, girl. And I was like, yeah, like, what do you want me to do about it? But I'm so glad she sent it over because even though I was annoyed about it, she says, I'm going to give you 2 weeks, and essentially told me, read the article, read the research, and come back to me in 2 weeks. If you feel the same, we won't do anything about it. And boy, am I happy that she did. Because the first thing that I realized reading that research was they didn't speak to any Black women at all. So again, this is research of Black cities, cities that have at least 100,000 Black women in it across the country. So very comprehensive research. They ranked all of the cities, but didn't actually take the time to interview any Black women that were living in the best cities or Black women that were living in the worst cities. And I'm seeing the faces around here. You all are as offended as I was. So I come back to Bethany, I'm like, did you realize this? And she's like, yeah, girl. So we are the people that need to do something about this. And we were just really galvanized by that. And to, again, put a finer point on why we keep saying Black, we do mean, obviously, African-American individuals, but we also are very, very radically inclusive when we're thinking about both Blackness and both womanhood, right? So we include LGBT individuals, individuals that are trans, Afro-Latinas, Black biracial, anybody that states that they are living their life as a Black woman have been included in our survey, and now this is our second iteration. So in the 2020 survey, we thought that maybe we would reach 25 to 50. I think I was asking Bethany, like, what would be statistically significant? She's like, if we get 50, that would be fantastic. In our first day, we were able to reach over 100 Black women that took the survey on our first day. By the end of the survey, we had to actually shut it down early because the survey ended up spreading to Baltimore, Honolulu, Hawaii. We had a woman email us from Seoul, Korea, and was like, I'm a Black woman. This is in my experience. And we're like, we would love to go to Korea, but it's COVID, and we cannot fly. So at the end, we ended up with 450 responses from Black women about their lived experience. 4 years later, in 2024, actually in 2023, we started saying the research is old, and we need to expand this. So our main research question was, since 2020, is the lived experience of Black women getting better or worse for Black women in Northeast Ohio?
So, happy to report that we received over 1,324 responses from Black women in this survey. So we nearly tripled what we were able to do in 2020. And what was really exciting about that was to see that not only was the community still interested, we had more interest than we had ever had. If you could go to the next slide. We started in 2020 with 4 core partners, and by 2024 we had over 80. And I will tell you right now, we've had, since the publication of Project Noir, we've had over 200 inquiries for partnership. So we are overwhelmed with the amount of support and excitement and energy around this work, especially at a time where it's hard to generate those conversations and that level of engagement, especially with folks who have been disappointed with processes over multiple years. So I want to add here, another important point is we want folks to understand that by starting with Black women, we believe that we build thriving communities. When Black women thrive, we all thrive. I'm often asked why I do this work as a white woman. I believe that my future is intertwined with with how Black women are treated, right? When Black women are treated better, I'm going to be doing quite well, and we know that historically. One of the biggest benefactors of affirmative action was people who look like me, right? And so I believe, and we believe, that in order to build truly sustainable change, we have to start with the hardest problems, not the easiest problems. And unfortunately, we often see in these conversations where folks are kind of sliced and diced and put into different categories and even pitted against each other, and we don't see that as an effective approach. We believe that when Black women are free, especially the most marginalized Black women who are dealing with socioeconomic issues, LGBTQ, neurodivergency, physical disability, when those ladies are free and thriving, we will all be thriving. And that's why we root our work here.
So to the first part of our research, the first focus area is workplaces. And quite honestly, this is a space where most Black women tend to come to the front door for us. So again, in our research, we not only do qualitative research or quantitative research, we also have qualitative research. So in our yes/no questions, we also include the opportunity for Black women to share their experiences more broadly. This is taken from a vignette from a Black woman here living in Cuyahoga County. It feels like I'm invisible. They treat me okay at work, but they never seem to see me as a Black person. They don't even try to understand where I'm coming from.
Go to the next slide. The next slide looks at some of the quantitative metrics in workplaces. And part of what inspired this conversation is after the research came out of the University of Pittsburgh, we had conversations with local leaders. And often what we heard were, there's lamenting, right? Why are we at the bottom? How did this happen? And then there was also kind of confusion. What can we do about this? Maybe we need to hold a conversation or a panel. We're all for a good panel and a nice lunch, but we need action, right, around these things. And when we talked with Black women about this research, what we heard was a laundry list of barriers. And something that's important to understand about our work is that we understand that policy, a system, doesn't walk into a room and cause these problems. It is individual choices. There's 1,000, 100,000, a million choices that we make across Cuyahoga County every day that either upholds the status quo or erodes it. And so what we were interested in was mapping and showing what these behaviors and tactics look like. And I will tell you, the more that we do this, the more that I'm convinced that this is a shared script, right? It's something that we can predict. It's something that we can measure, and it's something that we can change. Doing this work for so long, we're to a point where when I'm having conversations, I know what people are going to say next.
Immediately.
I know what the script is. And so what's important about this is twofold. First, what we hear from Black women is that this is the first time they've had language associated with what they're going through. And also for many Black women, the experience that they shared is that they often were internalizing and blaming themselves for these experiences. 90% of our participants in Project Noir 2020 said that their first reaction to systemic exclusion was to believe that they caused it, was to internalize it. Part of what Project Noir teaches and shows is that it's not you, it's the system. It can't be you whenever it's the same thing happening over and over and over again to to hundreds of thousands of women who look like you. So we'll see here that 79% of our respondents were paid less than others in a similar position. We know that that number is likely higher. 79% were aware that they were being paid less than others in a similar position. 65% of our respondents were asked to explain racism, sexism, or other political issues. If you've ever been on the receiving end of this, you know it's not a polite inquiry. It's an accusation. It's gaslighting. It's a conversation that puts you at risk, especially in the workplace. 50% of our participants had their work actively sabotaged, destroyed, or otherwise interfered with by coworkers or management. We talked with women who had come back to their office and had their drawers rifled through, had work shredded, had documents deleted. 50% of our participants. 49% of our Project Noir respondents have been called inappropriate names or slurs by coworkers. Sometimes when I talk to people around systems, they think that slurs aren't really happening anymore. I will tell you that I litigate them every day. They are still very prevalent. 49% have experienced that. And then we get into coded language, and it's even higher, right? The idea of slurs consistently changes. People move from one word to another. Whenever one word becomes too charged, they move to another. And we see that happening in Cuyahoga County very prevalently.
In the middle of, oh, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. A white supervisor called me a liar and dumb and sabotaged my work, belittled me in front of clients. That is not only disastrous to a person's personal feelings about their work, it's disastrous to their esteem within the industry that they're in. So again, these are ideas, these are feelings that Black women are going through, and most importantly, this survey is 110% anonymous. We do not know who is taking the survey. This was completely digital. We have multiple instances of Black women having the same exact experience across from Lorraine, Elyria, all the way down to Youngstown. So we know that these are absolutely scripts. On the next slide, we actually ended up going through and hand coding themes. So we stitched together all of the experiences of Black women for each section and created different themes that were around the experiences that Black women had been going through in the workplace. One of the most prevalent one in 2024 was the theme of lies, gossip, and accusation. Project Noir participants often face these damaging lies that in a professional setting absolutely tarnish a Black woman's reputation and actually fosters a lot of fear to even speak up or to speak out against whether it's you're being targeted within the workplace or you're seeing others being targeted in the workplace. The next theme, unreachable standards. Black women in both nonprofit and corporate. I slow down on this because folks think it's a nonprofit, these are do-gooders, everybody is altruistic. Black women in both nonprofit spheres and corporate spaces face unfathomable and unattainable standards. These expectations that they're only asking of Black women because they are expecting them to fail in a public and professional setting. And it perpetuates stereotypes about why you exclude Black women from certain jobs, why you're excluding Black women from leadership. It goes hand in hand with the idea of you destroy a particular company or a company goes through crisis, you all of a sudden find a Black woman to head that company. Once she is able to steer that ship, oh, you're no longer a cultural fit. It's the unreachable standards that Black women across Northeast Ohio are experiencing, and it is exiting them from workplaces, both in nonprofit and corporate spheres.
And government.
And government. One of the main themes that Black women in 2020 were asking us to do in our 2024 reiteration of Project Noir was the theme of, is DEI or DEI hire, is that a slur? And boy, oh boy, is it. I ran the Google trend analysis from 2022 to early 2024 about how individuals are utilizing either DEI hire, DEI candidate as it relates to Black women in leadership, managerial positions, or our department heads. And the trend skyrocketed. Since 2022, DEI hire or candidate has increasingly been utilized as a slur towards specifically Black women. Now, that doesn't mean that it does not affect other groups or other individuals. Black men also get it, Latino women also get it, but it is illustrated as a token of diversity, ignoring a Black woman's expertise, their ability to lead an organization, their intelligence, and it's a throwaway comment that is absolutely a complete and total slur, and it allows individuals to kind of shirk the responsibility of even upholding equity and inclusion within any kind of workplace.
So we're going to turn to healthcare. In this section, we find that folks are really focused. So we talk a lot about workplaces because it has to do with economics. In order to access healthcare, you often need to have the resources to get to the healthcare door, to have insurance. But we also find that women are very concerned about healthcare because it's a matter of life and death, right? And we know that here we have some of the worst infant mortality rates, some of the worst maternal mortality rates for Black women that we can possibly conceive. And so what's important about that, a lot of the work that we see focusing in this area, it's great work, right? But it focuses on things like social determinants of health. We talk about systems around the healthcare system. We talk about transportation. We talk about nutrition. We talk about all these other things, and that's very important. But also, part of the conversation is how the healthcare system is playing into and creating these metrics as well. You probably saw the story about Serena Williams and her experience when she went to the hospital to give birth and being ignored and almost dying.
Yeah.
Someone who was, incredibly healthy, you wouldn't think that that would be her experience. She's very resourced, right? And she's still dealing with the same things that are happening here. And these are life-threatening behaviors that, again, unfortunately, our healthcare institutions are engaging in every day.
We also include the point that this is not just on healthcare providers. This is not just on medical professionals. We genuinely believe this is a healthcare crisis from the moment you park your car in the parking lot. That's your parking attendants being rude. That is security officers rifling through your stuff, your things when you are attempting to check into a hospital. That's a healthcare administrator. That's your lactation specialist. That's all of the individuals around you when you are attempting to either go to a hospital, go to a clinic when you're seeking chronic care help or you're in an emergency situation. This is a vignette from a Black woman here in Northeast Ohio. A nurse at the hospital made me feel incredibly uncomfortable during a pelvic ultrasound. Her bedside manner was awful, and she treated me like I was just a practice dummy rather than a human being. We will note that we sanitize our data in the sense that we remove the names of healthcare institutions or workplaces or education institutions, but you better bet that all four were named and named consistently throughout the healthcare section. We did them a favor this time, but every single one has been named with their experiences with Black women. We have global esteem. 4 major healthcare institutions are in our foot traffic, in our pattern. We have global esteem, but persistent disparities. Despite our region's renowned reputation for healthcare excellence for Black women and families, the experience is absolutely the opposite. It's adverse, it's harmful, it's dismissive when seeking care from individuals who are your neighbors. And again, on Bethany's point, these healthcare disparities are not solely related to poverty. Black women that grew up where I grew up in Pepper Pike are having the same exact healthcare experiences as a Black woman that's living in government housing in Lorraine, right? These are complete and total factors that we know deal with Blackness and womanness. And again, we're still experiencing the worst healthcare outcomes because we're not being treated like human beings within these healthcare institutions.
Some statistics here. 56% of our respondents have had the experience of being spoken down to about their symptoms or health. A lot of the vignettes here talk about going to the doctor, right? Taking time off, paying your copay, parking, figuring out what building you're supposed to be in, which is the worst part for me. And then, getting into the doctor's office and talking about your symptoms and the doctor saying, I don't believe you, right? Or you're really exaggerating this. Many of our participants experienced, I think it was 35% of our participants experienced being turned down for diagnostic care and treatment. So asking for specific treatment or care. I'd like you to run this scan. I think I need blood work just to make sure. And the doctor's saying, no, I don't think you do, right? 55% of our respondents felt uncomfortable with a healthcare provider. And that ties to the 40% here. You'll see they were uncomfortable with healthcare staff's body language. There's things like refusing to shake your hand, like reaching out and them going like this, right? Eye rolls, scoffing, sighing. The body language that is sometimes difficult for folks to explain. And so we gave a lot of examples. And as soon as you give an example, it's, oh, that I have experienced that. That's absolutely right. 30% of our respondents have been subjected to painful procedures without enough pain management. This is a major theme that also came up in our qualitative data as well. There's a callousness around the pain of Black women. A vignette here that will stick with me for the rest of my life was a Black woman who was a healthcare practitioner. And she was uniquely qualified to see that she was being treated differently because she went in for a blood draw and she noticed that the phlebotomist was using a higher gauge needle than was necessary. And she asked her why, and this phlebotomist said, Black people have thicker skin, and so we have to use a higher gauge needle, which therefore causes more pain. And Chi-Chi and I have looked into this, and we actually found a textbook from 2017 that they're teaching doctors that this is the case. This is included in curriculum up until relatively recently. And so again, these behaviors across systems are very shocking and very concerning.
In the middle, I went to the doctor for a painful abscess, but all they wanted to talk to me about was my weight. Every single woman around this table has been told by a doctor something about their weight. You've got to get this down. You need to get this up here. We know. Women know.
I open Instagram and I know.
I see it every day. But if I have a painful abscess, that's what needs to take precedent. And for Black women, our weight, our bodies are consistently politicized in a way that other women have either lesser or different kinds of experiences. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. So one of the best things about working on an interracial team is Bethany being able to experience certain things, me being able to experience certain things, and us coming together and realizing, oh, we are having diametrically opposed experiences. But we'll talk about that in anti-Black stereotypes. The first one, bedside manner and over callousness. Black women experiencing dismissive and dehumanizing attitudes. Dehumanizing was a word that Black women had consistently used within Project Noir. From medical professionals, leading to emotional distress and a reluctance to seek necessary care. If you receive poor care, racist care, sexist care, it is only logical to say, I'm not doing this anymore. But for some reason, we turn it back on Black women and say, oh, well, you have to go back to that doctor. Oh, you have to go back and get that procedure. Why would I logically do that if I've experienced racist, sexist, dehumanizing experiences? Or why would I subject my family to that? It contributes to worsening health outcomes. Secondly, anti-Black stereotypes. It creates a hostile healthcare environment for Black women in Northeast Ohio, and it compromises this dignity of care that Black women should be getting. Again, we have broadened our healthcare section to not just be about Black maternal health. Of course, this is a major issue, but it is all about any kind of within the lifespan of a Black woman. Anti-Black stereotypes happen from the moment that girl is born all the way until her dying breath, right? One anti-Black stereotype that Bethany and I uncovered was around the access of birth control, right? I would say in my experiences, both of us are in our mid-30s. Our doctors are like, geriatric pregnancy, y'all are old, get to it or don't do it at all, right? But when we were accessing birth control, one of the more prevalent themes that we see with Black women is more invasive forms of birth control. Less consent around birth control, less information and resources around it. Just this idea that you need to have the strictest version of birth control, which is completely different than the kind of access that white women are getting.
Yeah, that was, I often say this was the only thing that kind of surprised me in this research. Pretty much everything at this point I feel like I've heard. So not much surprises me anymore, but this was a little surprising to me because the experience of myself and women who look like me is the opposite. We experience a lot of barriers to getting birth control. And so When myself and my friends talk about this, we often talk about doctors saying, "Are you sure?" Starting really early, saying, "Aren't you going to have a pregnancy soon? You should really think about that." I've talked to friends who have had doctors who have refused to provide birth control for different reasons. They've given excuses. And you can also see that in the level of hysterectomy rates. Black women have the highest level of hysterectomy rates of any population. And if you talk to doctors, they will say, well, Black women have these prevalences of different disorders and diseases. We suspect that there's a twofold issue there, right? They're pushing these more invasive procedures, and quite a few Black women that we talked to in this actually had issues with informed consent around that. We talked to one woman who believed that she was having a partial hysterectomy and woke up with a full hysterectomy, right? We've had many stories like that. We've talked to women who were told that a hysterectomy was the only option, only to find out later after it was done that there were other options available. And so that was a little bit surprising to me, because my experience as a white woman is facing barriers, but very different barriers, right? The barriers for me are, you don't need birth control, right? Let's go with something lower. Let's go with something that you can change easily. Whereas comparing that with Chi-Chi's experiences and the experiences of the women that we talk to, it's a very different conversation that we're having.
So one of the main themes that we were able to receive from Project Noir, the healthcare section, is pain management again, and the importance of Black providers. Black women of all ages and all income levels are reporting this refusal of adequate pain management, right? And it highlights how, again, this is coalescing around race and gender and not income. It's Black women that are making well over 6 figures having the same exact experience as a Black woman who is absolutely unemployed. One thing that we definitely note, and much of the research that is out there notes, is the importance of Black providers and the importance of Black advocates, right, within the healthcare system. They are uniquely positioned to deliver this kind of empathetic and patient-centered care that is actually saving the lives of Black women, both clinically and culturally. We always pause in this part in the healthcare section to talk about the Black women and the Black clinics around our county that are providing this kind of care. We always talk about Village of Healing, and not just because Dana is our board chair, but she is fantastically providing holistic health for Black women, Black families at Village of Healing out in Euclid, and now with a Buckeye Shaker extension over here. Birthing Beautiful Communities with Jasmine Long. Tons and tons of Black providers and medical professionals are very interested in providing patient-centered care. Now, what are we doing to provide a pathway for Black children, Black students to be able to also reach those heights, to be able to be in a pipeline to provide healthcare within a healthcare hub?
So to that point, we'll talk about education, and we'll talk about a couple key themes that are contributing to the lack of Black healthcare providers. So we'll start out with a vignette from a local woman.
In general, there's this assumption from many professors that you, especially a Black woman, don't have the same level of education or experience as non-Black students. We are invisible to these professors. Our voices are silenced because of racist stereotypes. If they can't even fathom you in that building, if they can't even fathom you in that white coat, they're not going to set you up for those kinds of opportunities. And again, this is contributing to a massive and artificially created brain drain here in Northeast Ohio.
So some statistics around this: 63% of respondents said they felt they needed to work harder to get the same grades as their fellow students. One woman described working on a group project, and all of her group mates received an A and she received a C. Right? And when she asked the professor why, he just wouldn't give her an answer. She wouldn't give her a rubric or a particular reason. He just said, "I just felt like you deserved a C." Right? 54% of Project Noir respondents said they were excluded from educational opportunities, including professional development. This is things like the internship opportunity and the referral for it and the reference, which we know are some of the best opportunities that you can get. 49% of our participants were steered into entry-level careers rather than urged to chase their passion. This is part of the pipeline problem that we're talking about when we need more Black healthcare practitioners than ever. And one vignette that has always stuck with me is we talked to a young Black woman who talked with her guidance counselor in high school and said, "I want to be a surgeon." And his response was to put her into an STNA program, right? STNAs are great, they're essential to our healthcare institutions, but she wanted to pursue being a surgeon and she was steered in this other direction. And we get direct comments as well. I talked to a Black woman who wanted to go into engineering and her professor told her that Black people just don't do well with math,
Yeah.
right?
They don't pass the test.
That's what he was saying.
Yeah.
33% of Project Noir respondents were excluded from informal gatherings like study groups with classmates or lunch with professors, which, as we know, is where some of the best networking opportunities happen. This is prevalent across our region.
I want to put, again, a finer point on why these informal gatherings are so key and why in the greater ecosystem of equity and inclusion and diversity, we need to protect these spaces even more. You stated at the beginning that I am a proud graduate of The Ohio State University. It is the best decision that I could have ever made, but I think part of it is because I had spaces like the Hale Center, which was our Black Student Union. I was a part of the African Student Union when it was burgeoning at that time. These were spaces, informal spaces where professors came in and to talk about recruiting us for certain internships, public policy opportunities. These are the ways that individuals are not only able to see their professors or their teachers in a different light, but they're also able to see themselves in a different light, right? So this opportunity for Black girls, we are completely being passed over, and the pipeline is broken within our region here. Professor in college told me I was not good enough to be an engineer. This was today. So one of the main educational themes that Black girls and Black women are experiencing within education is discouragement, outright discouragement. Educators are often diminishing the quality of their own instruction because of who is on the opposite side of the table, right? Their feedback is lacking. Like Bethany stated, their rubrics are missing. And more than that, they are stifling the potential of young Black girls, making it imperative for these institutions to eliminate that kind of stifling, to eliminate these biases, because instructors are having a lot of free will within their classrooms, and if they are not encouraging all individuals, you are doing yourselves a complete and total disservice. Secondly, one that really shocked me, you kind of know it in the back of your head, and I experienced it going through school, but putting a name to it. Black girls are being expected to educate others, not only their peers, but their administrators, their professors, their teachers about their experience, and it's not in a positive light, right? It's this idea that they are burdened with the expectation to explain to individuals about their racial demographics, to talk about gender issues, and it distracts from their ability to actually achieve their educational and academic goals. So again, it's as simple as like, oh, well, I saw that there was a police-involved shooting. Why is this important to the class? And now the entire class is turned to the one Black woman, and you have to explain it away. Or your teacher completely ignores you. It's this idea that Black girls are not able to just be students, they also have to be teachers as well. I keep mentioning this brain drain because for this particular county, it is important. We are losing population. Don't have to remind you all about the census, but we are losing population, and artificially, it's because we are not able to capture and keep our best, our brightest, our most motivated, our most determined within this county. Bias in undereducating young Black women and Black girls is creating a brain drain that is threatening our state's economic stability. I loved the fact that Ms. Contreras, you talked about, listen, it's important, but we're talking about the economics. The economic stability of our state is key, and if we're not rooting ourselves in equity, if we're not rooting ourselves in the expertise of Black women and Black girls, we're creating ourselves an artificial brain drain that is going to make our state even more destabilized. And again, we're going to be losing population to places like Charlotte, like Tempe, Arizona. Like one of my girlfriends just moved to Tempe. Like, why would you move to Tempe? But she stated that there are not opportunities for here in the state. So again, we're going to be losing population to states that are able to kind of foster a little bit more of a wider arm for the experiences of Black women and Black girls.
So to wrap it up, we'll talk about a couple of opportunities, and I will say we're a think tank. So we have ideas galore, probably too many. We're texting each other at 3 a.m. with new ideas pretty often, but we have a lot of different ways that we'd love to be involved with the county. We have ideas on how we could support you. So if you could go to the next slide. A couple are obviously partnering with us around data. We have a lot of ideas, particularly around community-driven data. Data disclosures, data requirements around this. Something that we hear from community members pretty often is, I'd like to know which provider would be best for me. I'd like to know and understand what the infant and maternal mortality scores are between providers and institutions. Those are things where right now Black women are just guessing in the dark on who's going to be best for them. Or there's word, right, in the community. People are talking about and getting referrals from one another, but it's very difficult if you're not connected and don't know who to ask. Committing publicly to equity goals for Black women, outlining specific objectives and timelines. We have ideas around programming. I get calls from folks who need to understand what their legal rights are, but also what their practical rights are. There's a difference between filing a legal case and talking to an ombudsman. What's the importance of that? Where do we want to start? Do you need to file an ethics complaint with the state health licensing board, right? There are many different options when we think about what we're going through. But for a lot of Black women, it's disorienting, right? Where do I start, especially when I have been wrong? In particular, I get questions about medical malpractice. Medical malpractice is a very specific and high bar, and it involves having long-term harm. And so there's a lot of things like pain management that shouldn't be happening, but we don't have legal mechanisms to enforce them right now. So we really need to think about, are there ways to hold systems accountable to this, particularly using data and public-driven structures. Facilitating public discussions featuring Black women leaders and experts, and of course supporting legislative policies. We've talked pretty openly about the fact that both Columbus and Cincinnati have implemented the Crown Act. We have not done that here locally, and Black hair was something that came up repeatedly across education and workplaces.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely.
Sure, the Crown Act is legislation.
Yes, but I want to actually get.
Yeah. The Crown Act is legislation protecting Black women's natural hairstyle, so prohibiting discrimination in workplaces and education against hairstyles. Now, we can kind of sort of get at it, right? If I get a client, in a workplace setting who's making negative comments about her hair and they're racialized, I can still kind of hold them accountable through the EEOC process and legal process, but we'd like to go further, right? We'd like to see local legislation supporting folks and banning discrimination in hairstyles across our county.
You guys be kind enough to send some examples.
Of course, yeah. There's legislation locally, nationally. There's an entire initiative nationally that we can point you to as well. And next.
So we have some resources. Obviously, I'm a former middle school teacher, and Bethany just reads every book, but we have opportunities for folks to be able to challenge these previously held beliefs. We have a ton of different kinds of resources that in your spare time, in your, within the body of this committee, you all can explore that will kind of charge and challenge some of your experiences, and more than that, expand what can be done within this body. One of the first experiences, or one of the first resources, is a great book called Fearing the Black Body. It's about the racial origins of fat phobia. I will say it is a difficult read. Definitely take it in parts. There are there are opportunities for you all to look this up online, and there are study guides around it, but it is an eye-opening historical narrative about how medicine and fat phobia are inextricably linked, and it is very, very connected to the healthcare section of the Project Noir report.
Also created a podcast locally with NPR and IdeaStream. It is season 1 of Living for We. And you can hear there some of the stories from women directly. So women who participated in Project Noir, we brought them on to tell their stories in a narrative format. And again, we believe in pairing both quantitative metrics and qualitative data. Quantitative metrics work really well for moving systems, seeing if we're changing things, but qualitative stories show the humanity and impact. When you see just the statistic, it's easy to kind of dismiss it and say, oh, well, this is one little data point. If this was all I experienced, it's something that I could move forward from. But the reality is that Black women are experiencing all of these things over and over and over again. And so our podcast gets into how that impacts folks and what the human toll really is behind these statistics.
I'll also add, and again, it is season 1 of Living for We. I'll also add, it is very good. We won a Webby Award for it, and we also won an Edward R. Murrow Award for it. So we promise you it's very, very good.
I don't know what those are, but they said it was good.
Oh, I screamed. I was like, Bethany, you don't know what this is? She's like, no, girl, I have no idea. We would like to end on this. Enlightened Solutions believes that Northeast Ohio will be a national leader in racial and gender equity, especially for Black women. Many times folks, local leaders, civic leaders are like, you're just saying this because you hate this region. They could not be further from the truth. We live in the city of Cleveland. We love Cleveland. This is the best place to actually turn the tide. If we as researchers were thinking about where are the issues the most proximate, you would want to go to the place where it is the most proximate, and that just happens to be our backyard. Again, we think that these ideas, these solutions are inherently exportable to across the country, and if we're able to change these metrics here, we can do this across the country. So thank you for your time. Ready for any comments or questions?
Definitely want to open the floor to members for questions. I want to thank you for this opportunity to hear from Enlightened Solutions, and thank you for revisiting the research. I know that it has not likely been easy to hold up Black women in this way and shine a light on our suffering. There are reasons no one asked women in the first body of research what their experiences were. I think there's an expectation that Black women would endure suffering, and that it is an expectation that our lives would have suffering held within it. And so you lifting up these issues from the voices of Black women, I think, is a powerful and humanizing experience for us. So.
Thank you, first and foremost, and thank you, Clerk Bird, for preempting us with this being a great presentation, because it was for me. Ronnie Cannon with Towards Employment. I had an opportunity to sit on some leadership training a couple years back, and they talked about where people fall from a generational standpoint, like first generation leaders versus second generation leaders. So I guess my question for you is, in order to break, say, do some cycle breaking, in your research, are you asking questions around for student, are you the first, like you say, you're first generation?
I am American.
Yeah. And then from your research, are you addressing that or asking that question about what generation are people coming to the surveys with?
Sure. I would say indirectly. When we ask, what your demographics are, one of the demographic questions is, are you Black American, African American? Are you a diasporic African American? Are you diasporic from the Caribbean? Are you diasporic from a Spanish-speaking nation? So we kind of can get a little bit more texture and flavor on that, but also in our outreach, right? So I try to root every conversation with the fact that I am a first-generation American. I have an immigrant story, and therefore in our outreach, we were able to go into certain immigrant communities and speak about this. I will say the reticence is still there for many of the reasons that Ms. Contreras has talked about. Immigration, surveillance. I mean, during 9/11, my own family, folks are like, oh, you're from a Muslim majority country, now you're under surveillance. So we try to be very, very careful about how we are asking individuals. But to your point around the generational divide, some of it could be addressed with the age bands and what ages individuals identify as within the research.
We did ask about age, and we have a nice age distribution. I will say our highest response rates were millennials, between younger Gen X and older Gen Z. So kind of between millennials, and then those two groups were a little bit higher, but we had everybody from 18 to, I believe our oldest was 78, 79 participant. We have good representation. You'll see slightly different conversations. So for example, in the education section, when we talk to younger folks, well, I'll start with older folks, right? Some of our participants would talk about the experience of experiencing busing and desegregation and what that was like. What it was like being the first Black woman in their college class, right, and what they had to fight through. When we talk to younger women, I think the focus is kind of less on education. There's a feeling of because we're doing so well in education, we're outpacing other groups, right? For Black women, they're doing kind of the best around education that we can see right now. And so kind of the focus has shifted to, okay, but how about my success in the workplace? Because it's not translating, right? I can be Black women can be the most educated person in the room and still be the least paid, the least respected, and the one who's having the most trouble moving up. And so we saw kind of this focus on, for older folks, a high focus on education. Well, if you just get educated, then that will break those barriers. And for younger folks, we're seeing I am educated and I'm still facing those barriers. So there are different stories along generational lines.
Shout out for the graphics also. That was
Thank you for saying that. We appreciated it. I think I said I wanted this report to feel like a Solange song, so like Browns and Moody and feel good. But thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you for this presentation. Long fan of your work. One question is, how supported do you feel in this region with this work? And I'm asking specifically around CEOs, senior elected officials, decision makers. You don't have to throw anyone under the bus. I just want to know where can we leverage our advocate and strength? Because I'm thinking you're talking to the people who can change the culture.
Yeah.
So I just want to know.
Well, it's almost Friday, so I might just name some names.
Yeah. I don't mind.
About to get Prosecco, you know.
Yeah.
That's a great question, thank you. I think as long as we've been doing this, the conversation has shifted a little bit. But I will say, even in times where people were very hyper-focused on DEI, say it was 2020, 21, 22, what we see a lot of is performativeness around this work. So we see conversations, come in and talk to us. We want to have a meeting. We want to have a sit down. We got to a point where we were refusing to take photos.
Yeah.
Because there was this constant thing where it was come in, get a photo with us. It gets posted on Instagram and Twitter, and we've done it, right? This is the conversation that we've had. We still have a pretty significant lack of investment. We're still a two-person team after all these years, and we do work with systems. We do consulting work. If we hadn't done that and done earned income to put our own work and own dollars back into this work, we wouldn't have been able to survive and continue doing the work that we do. We do have some philanthropic investment. Those folks have kept us going. They're folks who really believe in our work and have believed from day one, even before we published our first report. But we've really struggled to break in with the rest of philanthropy. We are still kind of seen as the new kids on the block. Even though I'm basically middle-aged at this point.
I'm knocking on 40. Come on, y'all. Young, but not a child, right?
Right. And so we still see, people want to have conversations about this, but there's a continued lack of investment. We still haven't seen the large-scale types of interventions that we are hoping to see, which is why we keep doing this work every day. And right now, I would say the tide has been even more difficult, right? It's been folks kind of not wanting to have the conversation even. So we're still working really hard, and so we can use every piece of help and support that you can offer.
So, and you're a 501c3, right?
We
Yes.
are.
Okay. Well, thank you for this presentation. I'll be in touch. But one thing I will say, when you are working with people that you encounter in this work, and you talk about things that they can do immediately in the healthcare space, one of the things that I've learned early on is that if you ever encounter a healthcare professional and you ask for something and they refuse, you ask them to document that in your file. And the language you use is, please document that you refuse to provide me this care that I asked for.
Yeah.
They change every time.
Yeah.
Every
That's something
time.
that came up when we talked with
Yeah.
participants about. And we've talked too about having something like navigation support across these systems, because there are a lot of little tricks like that that can help you access care, but we can't expect folks who are dealing with disease, life-threatening
To know,
conditions to
yeah.
come in
It puts
and
the
be
onus on
perfectly
them.
poised
Yeah.
and remember the fact sheet or infographic we gave them 6 months ago,
Yeah.
right? There needs to be someone that you can call to step in, and that's a large-scale public structure that we would need to think about. But there are a lot of things like that, little pieces that we wish everybody knew.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Of course.
I'll call you, Gigi.
Council President.
Proud of you.
So, for me, your report, what's the national attack on DEI in a different? you made a persuasive case that for Greater Cleveland to solve its economic problems and thrive, that we need to fix these inequities. And so attack is suppressing our economic potential.
Absolutely.
And it's we just gotta resist and say, we gotta pursue dealing with inequities so that we can be successful for everybody.
We're absolutely leaving money on the table. I think the easiest way to explain it to individuals is you are leaving money on the table. You are allowing not just a Black woman to leave, but that Black woman, if she has children or has a family, that whole tax base is leaving as well. I could ask you around the room how many of your nieces and nephews have left this region, and I'm certain at least half of you all have family that say, the Midwest isn't for me anymore. I'm moving south, I'm moving west, I'm moving to New York or Chicago, or I'm moving to Savannah, Georgia. Like, this idea is absolutely making us poorer as a region, and more than that, that means our culture is being diluted here as well. We start off by saying that this is a Black majority city, and again, if that means these individuals are leaving, we're leaving a cultural legacy that is lost within this region. And I'll lastly leave with this point around money and around the economics. One of my favorite quotes from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is, "Budgets are moral documents." They are moral documents. Where we are flooding our money is where our morals lie. And if we are not flooding our money, our time, our energy, our resources towards protection of the individuals that are the most vulnerable, we are not living by our morals. If we are allowing these individuals to leave, we are not living by our own morals. So making sure that it's not just in name only, it's not just in performance and mission statements and a press statement, it's also dollars.
You know, I'm taking my time in responding, but what I will say carefully is we have powers that we're not exercising. I'm going to say it as an elected official here. Who we vote for, who we choose matters. One of the things I've done in the administration, not intentionally, but just by as people are retiring or moving on, is I have a very, very diverse staff. I've hired my first Ukrainian. Yesterday I hired my first Puerto Rican who will be working in the service department. It was difficult in the interview because he doesn't speak English. And I've been told by the old guards there, I'm constantly asked what I'm doing. And I was told by someone that I'm hiring way too many people of color. That I should probably think about how, I'm serious, I mean, I had to readjust myself in my seat. I said, you know, do you realize your last 4 hires, I hired my first Black African-American male director. Now, it took me 100 years to get there. I'm the first woman and first person of color in 100 years in the city. I don't look at the candidate, I'm not intentionally looking for Black candidates. I look up the resumes. But who's applying to Maple Heights right now? And it's probably because looks like me.
Yeah.
Because they think they have a chance.
Yeah.
Because they look like me. So I am not on the corner saying I want all the Black candidates to apply at Maple Heights. But that's who's applying. Someone from Grafton's not going to apply in Maple Heights. Although I got someone from some small town on the other side of Chesterland. He drives like an hour. Wow. That was different. But I was warned that I should be careful with all the Black people that are in City Hall.
Yeah.
And I am looking at talent and some extremely impressive resumes and some extremely credentials. And these are people, and they get in front of me, I've always wanted a city job. People say to me, when they get the offer, I've always wanted a city job, and I'm thinking, okay,
And then so I asked him, I said, I just never thought I would get it. But since you're here, I can see a possibility. And so those are the things that are being said to me as a woman, a Black woman. And you're right, my daughter is not coming back. She's at Yale Law School, and she's home on spring break, but she is moving. She's looking at Raleigh and Atlanta. Don't want to live there
Raleigh was
because
one
of the
of the top
traffic.
Our daughter's not coming
So
back.
what you're saying is correct, but there are consequences to what we do at the polls. And we tend to vote by name recognition. That's problematic. I like to call myself, I'm beyond a change age. I'm a change captain. And that's a different role. And the people that get in these seats need to understand the power they have, what you have done. My husband went to Lincoln West, worked at Metro, so we watched the whole thing. Is harnessing the power that you have. And without going too far, we have to start building our own. I was one of those people that had that healthcare injustice done to me. I felt like I was just torn apart in an unnecessary medical procedure. And I spent years depressed and crying about it over and over again when I realized that there was another option.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I know Jasmine, I know the young lady that I was at an event that Teresa Metcalf put together, was it Village? What's it called?
Village of Healing, Dana
Village of
Lansford,
Healing.
yeah.
I got to meet her. It's sad, we don't want to segregate, but we do have to build our own because our needs are different and the language is different and the compassion's different. And we have to exercise the power. You built your own. I wrote it down. You said that. What's happened in Maple Heights was a travesty. 25,000 people lived there, and they were left. No hospital, drugstores. I fought to get a Save-A-Lot. I fought 4 years to get a Save-A-Lot. Because the By-Right, which was owned by an Italian family in Mapletown, closed. And where were people going? Dollar stores. And we finally got the Giant Eagle, and now we have 2 Save-A-Lots. And I worked with Randall McShepard to get Brittle. I called him when the market closed, and I said, I need you here. So we have to find the people that are willing, and you have to find people who are change and champions that will go out and find what their people need. And then when you find those leaders, we have to have support. Thank you for your acknowledgement today, keeping ourselves healthy. Because carrying 25,000 people on my back and turning employees is no easy job. And as the administration changes, having to justify it over and over again, they don't even know when he shows up, is that the director? Yeah, that's the director. And so then I have to fight for his dignity. You talk to him. This is the director. And so it is what pops off the screen, what you hear, everything you're saying is very, very true. I come from corporate America. I worked at Deloitte. Do you know how many times I was told to change my hair? I tried that. I had that. And then when I was in mayor, they said, if you're gonna win for mayor, straighten it.
Yeah.
My daughter lost her mind. I straightened my hair. But I made the mistake one day of deciding I was gonna put a curly thing in my head. I was just gonna do something different. So I put this curly weave, it was red, it was cute, I thought it was gonna be adorable. And I'm gonna say the name, FedEx Ground was one of our clients. I did commercial property tax assessments. And so I traveled in all 88 counties. And when my senior manager said, you're gonna go to the client with your hair like that? How long will it take you to take that out? I want your hair the way it was last week. He says, well, it's a sew-in. I can't just. I got berated all the way to Moonship Township, because that's where the PA, because that's where the about my hair. And then I was told not to wear my hair like that again when I was going to a client. So I just want to bring reality to what you have seen on the screen. And so it's been this way. I've been there 9 years.
Yeah.
And my daughter keeps saying, when are you going back? Part of me wants to go back because straightening this, and when it gets curly, It sticks up. It just has its own kind of thing. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's just difficult. I've always been in white spaces. And now I'm being completely black as the black female mayor, the first in Maple Heights. The racism I've endured is awful.
Yeah.
I am the ghetto mayor. We have, people don't take their trash cans back. It's because we have a ghetto mayor. And ghetto is put just simply because I'm black. I take my trash cans back. And it's not just the black people not taking their trash cans back. I ride by and there's other people that are not taking their trash. But because there's a black woman sitting in that mayor's office, the standards of Maple Heights have changed because she's here.
Yeah.
And I'll conclude with this. This is the same woman that see out of fiscal emergency in 4 years. It's a 5-year recovery. And there's some cities that have been in fiscal for 20 years. I did it in 5. And you know what? They wouldn't release me. They did 3 independent audits. They said, there's no way. Both auditors, Yost and the second one, Faber. He finally came and said, oh my God, I had to prove there's just no way. They went over it 5 times to prove that I was out of fiscal number. And then they finally gave me the Auditor of State Award, and I've got it for 4 years. So this, even when you arrive, people's belief, and I have a lot of power, right? I have a lot of power. There's still the heartbreak, there's still the frustration, there's still the proving over and over again. And then when I have this coffee cup, this girl boss, and I always say, don't make me boss up, because if I boss up, that's a different title. So I'm careful about where I boss up and how much, but there's times I simply have to. And I just pray for forgiveness later. But it is, I applaud your work. Thank you for the interview that we did one-on-one. It's important to have these conversations, even at this level.
Yeah.
Where you are the decision maker. And I have a police force that does not look like me.
Yeah.
I fought to stop police pursuits because too many people were getting hurt. And we were chasing people and putting other people at risk, hit 2 cars trying to turn into rallies coming from Maple Heights to go to Lee Harvard Ward 1, because once somebody was driving erratically. Another time somebody had tinted windows and we ran into someone's house and ran through the front porch and destroyed their house. Of course, we have immunity. And I had a war with my police chief and said, you will stop driving high-speed police pursuits, because I'm supposed to do something different. So when we get there, in conclusion, what you've done, Sheila, is something different. You don't know that's affordable houses versus market rate. It's a battle to do something different. It's alienation. It's scary to do something different. But it's being up all night. Can I do this? Second guess. But we must do something different. And we must continue to build our own.
Thank you.
I think that testimony is a powerful one for us to maybe start to, I know we have other agenda items, but I really want to honor time and capacity. I will say, please know that this body and its subcommittee chairs and myself are determined to be action-oriented, and so we are moving through necessary work. Thank you all for your committee engagement. Thank you to Enlightened Solutions. Black women, and particularly Black women leaders, are on our hearts as we think about the future work and how we might come alongside the Women's Health Commission and stand beside them, uplift work that they are planning. There are things to come in that regard. But I think that drive that's been in our heart to attend to the needs of Black women through our work as a body is affirmed by your presentation. And I pray one day this is a different report.
Every day. That's what we're working towards, essentially for us to become obsolete so that we can do other things.
I don't know what I'd do.
I know.
You should stay in Northeast Ohio, we'll be all right.
My husband would not have it any other way. I got a Pittsburgh guy to move to Cleveland, if you can imagine. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank him for us. We are the benefactors of that. I know we have our department directors here. An email update would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. I hope this information was helpful for you to hear.
Absolutely.
I will also say, and I know some of you have been with this council for a while, really care about the GARE reports. We don't get to, but I do keep doing them. We really did go to a conference. We really have a lot of information about it. I've actually shared it during my meetings with my own boss, so it was really a powerful conference. I am going to send it to you in an email, a comprehensive email. Please just pretend to read it. Please print it and read it.
I actually read them when you send them.
Thank you, thank
And
you.
GARE falls underneath Race Forward, am I correct? Tony?
Yes, it does.
So I wanna highlight that, cause GARE can, acronyms can be,
Yeah.
sound a certain way, but Race Forward as an entity is an amazing resource. So
And that's-
as you do
Yeah.
your own work, they have resources that can be useful too.
And
so.
that's what we participate in.
Yep.
Julia and I both do this work, so I will send that. So
That'd be great.
from the conference I went to in November, that was in St. Louis, so.
It wasn't until you went to the conference that I learned that GARE was part of
Race forward, right.
Alrighty, yes, thank you. So we have a proposal to, allow for virtual meetings, given legislation that, grants access for public bodies to, have meetings virtually, which was not an option for us after COVID, after the height of COVID ended. So I'm gonna turn it over to Clerk Byrd to explain that further and then determine how we wanna proceed.
Sure, so we actually consulted a little bit with the law department on this, and House Bill 257 was signed by Governor DeWine on January 8th and goes into effect on April 9th, 2025. And what that legislation does is it authorizes members of public bodies to attend meetings or hearings virtually when the public body has adopted policies, including a virtual meeting policy. So in other words, what that means is, as a public body, if we amend our bylaws to adopt a virtual alternative to meet or to meet virtually and make that a part of our bylaws, we can do that. So we don't have to come down, sort of like what we did during COVID. But in order to do that, we have to vote at a meeting where we're in person. And so we wanted to see if there was an appetite to do something like that. I know I've had requests from certain members, can I join virtually, can I join virtually? And we're sort of like, no, because you can't, we need you here, we need you here. But now that the legislation has pivoted, we could do that. So if you want to have discussion about it, if we want to have a motion, we could take a motion and then I'd have to work with law to amend the bylaws. And we discussed this, you on communication?
Sure. I'd like to at least offer a motion that Communications Committee would work with the law department and others at the county to allow virtual meetings in the future.
Is there a second to that motion? Second. Heidi, is there any discussion? Do you all want to come down here, get parking passes, water?
I just, the only thing on the discussion part is, as much as I prefer virtual, because my day gets crazy and it just gets hard for me to get down here at 3 o'clock, and even today I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be late. So I think it's challenging for all of us, because we're all managing a lot of things, but then like this magic also doesn't happen, right? Like the sharing, the connecting with each other. So the communications committee would just almost think of like a hybrid model, like certain meetings, but at least twice a year we come together, or, you know what I mean? I think there's, yeah.
Because you're so like-minded, that is exactly what
Okay.
we talked about.
Good, good.
Exactly. Didn't we? I mean, if you want to
It
say.
could be a bad weather day in February, we say.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but as long as there's some
But there should
points
be,
of,
yes.
because I don't get to see all of these wonderful people.
And making it a not, obviously not all of them, I don't think the intent was
The
that
intent
all of
is,
them.
the couple things, the intent is not to pivot entirely to virtual, because you're absolutely right. The magic that happens in person is essential to the work. The other thing is hybrid with some online and some in this space is probably not likely to come out of this process either, but we really did want to look to the communications subcommittee and Subcommittee Chair Shoemate to help shape that bylaw change so that it's acknowledging of what is optimal for us as a as a body in terms of our ongoing communication and meeting.
The other
It's nice to have the
consideration is also to be in community, right? Like, so I think the parking sometimes is better. I mean, we could come out to Mayfield, or we could come to Centro Villa, or we could.
Maple Heights.
Maple Heights, sorry. We could like
My
visit
life would be
each other.
easier if I was the mayor of
Sorry.
Mayfield.
The students from Mayfield Heights or Centro Villa, the school bus. So I have them in mind. But I think, also rooted in community and going to communities and going to some of our spaces, I think might also add to the dynamic of being the people's voice in the county. So.
We didn't even think about it. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you. With that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.